Well, thank you guys for joining us today. So we're here for our second Parent Toolkit series. And today we're going to be talking about advocacy and communication. Because we want to, one, help our students feel empowered to speak about how they're feeling and speak about what they need. And I know we took some data from teachers, and that was one thing that we noticed, that students are struggling with is advocating for themselves when they need to communicate their feelings or they need something. So we want to talk about that today. So I'm Brianna. For those of you who don't know me, I am the school counselor here at Top of the World, and I am
I'm Miriam Moss, and I'm the counselor at Morro Elementary. We've met before. Those of you that are joining us online, welcome.
Alrighty, so our learning objectives for today are to help communicate confidently and effectively as a parent, because if we want our child to learn those advocacy skills, we have to model that for them as well too. And then that can help foster children's self-advocacy. That's another objective for today, and problem-solving skills. And then we also, as we're communicating and teaching these skills, we want to model these skills in respectful, solution-focused ways. Because if we can model that, and I know we try to do that as teachers and staff members, and if we can model that as a parent, that can help them generalize that skill sooner, right? And be more independent. And we feel this is important because when we look at our learner profile, we're really focusing on these situations, or our students to develop these skills. And for these parent workshops, we're really hoping to help our students become empathetic citizens. So we're really focusing on that, and a creative problem solver. So just to recap, we met in September for our first Parent Toolkit series, and we talked about the zones of regulation, which I think was a great lesson to start on, to build those foundational skills to help your child communicate how they feel. Because in today's lesson, when we talk about helping students problem solve, it's going to start with having them talk about their feelings first within that. So to recap, in the first session, we talked about the zones, which is a tool that helps students communicate their feelings by a color. If you weren't there for that, it's 4 zones: the red zone, the blue zone, the yellow zone, and the green zone. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the slides. For today, we're going to talk about that advocacy and communication and what that means and how we can model that for our children, and how we can teach them problem solving skills when they're faced with a problem, to solve those problems effectively and advocate and state their feelings appropriately. So we want to ask you to recap from session 1. How would you describe how things are going with the zones at home? So I know we had a virtual session. Yeah, and we have a parent on Zoom, so they can type in the chat if they were a part of our first parent series. How, in one word, are the zones going?
Oh, just one word. I would say effectively. They successfully. Yeah.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that we don't always use the colors of the zones now, but it enabled us to be able to identify that. So one example is this morning, actually. We're having a hard time getting out the door. It's a Monday morning, it was really early. And I turn to my little one and I say, I really don't.
Hello. Hello. Welcome. No worries. Come on in. Thanks for joining us today.
And instead of yelling at them, come join us. I said, I said, I can feel myself getting frustrated, and I really don't want to be frustrated. I don't want us to be frustrated as a family as we leave for school today. I really need you to, they're asking me to talk about the zones. Could you please hurry up and get ready, because I can feel myself getting frustrated. So I did the zone, I didn't say it in the zone verbiage, but it allowed me the ability to, instead of getting angry, to express my feelings about what was going to happen if she didn't do her. So I, you know, I mean, I don't know if I'm not expressing it well, but if it made, I was able to express my frustration before it became an issue.
And in a calm way.
And in a
And
calm
it's
way.
kind of, I love hearing that because you're kind of using some of the steps we're gonna talk about today. And you're modeling that advocacy and that communication in a respectful way, right? You're not getting too loud and starting to scream, right? And you're not being too passive about it, like, oh, just take your time, you know, you're being assertive, you're setting a boundary, you're letting them know how you feel, so.
I said, look, I said, I'm going to get frustrated and I don't want to be cranky this morning. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to move into that zone. I didn't say it that way. So I don't want to be cranky. So let's get going together. So I don't have to be, because I know that's where that's headed. And we can't
Right.
get ourselves out the door in a timely manner.
Totally.
And we made it to school on time. So.
Yes.
There's close.
Thank you for sharing that. Were you guys a part of our first parent
We
group?
were.
Okay, so that's what we were just talking about, was we were recapping from our first session. We talked about we talked with parents about the zones of regulation, which is a tool that we teach here at the school to help students identify their emotions by color. So there's 4 different zones: the blue zone, the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. The green zone is the zone we want to be in. That's where we feel happy, calm, focused, ready to learn. But we teach students we're not always in that zone, and that's okay. So how can we get into that zone with some strategies and coping skills? So we were asking parents if they were at the first session, how the zones tool has been going at home, because we did provide that.
Yeah, we do something similar.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah, successful moment or maybe even a challenging one.
Sure, we have challenges every day. So we have a 4.5-year-old boy.
Oh.
And that's it. So he's the only child with syndrome. And he's very quick to, like, if he's not getting his way, he escalates it very quickly. So she does a much better job than I do at, you know, just getting down at his eye level and bringing him back to the green. I take a different approach too. And I'm trying to think of a good example. It might be just from something simple as cleaning, asking him to clean one time, where he just didn't want to do it. And kind of walking him through the benefits of having the clean space and how that, you know, affects him and us. And he stepped in and said, okay, let's do this. And he's now on what's called kindness bucket.
Oh, yeah, kindness bucket.
He loves to fill up his kindness bucket for the day. And so if we do something wrong, he goes up, you're dipping into the kindness bucket,
Oh.
something away. And so it works, well, it works both ways, which is
Oh,
good for communication.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome. And again, I love hearing that you guys are using some of the skills that we're gonna talk about today. Modeling those positive ways to communicate with your child, right? So they can learn from you in those moments.
Yeah, just a quick, and then you're trying to target this even, like what you were saying is almost even identifying where you're about to go.
Oh, yeah.
And that may be actually really useful for me, because it's to the point where, like, we both travel for work too, so, you know, sometimes, you know, one parent is doing, you know,
Double
the
duty.
morning or double duty, right? So typically mom's not very good at morning duty. And I've had my meltdowns in front of them, and then I had to apologize and say, you know,
Yeah.
Rylan, we need to do this together. And so maybe just reflecting on that, like, instances, like, hey, mom doesn't want to get here. How can we, like, not get to that place? What can you do to help me, and I can help you, so we can stay in this nice calm place?
Yeah.
Okay,
I would be happy to share one of these with you too, because
Yeah,
these are super helpful, especially for the littles, because it's colors.
Okay.
right?
It's a
They,
great-
they don't even have to say the emotion, they could say, I'm in the red zone. You know, and that means I'm angry or I'm scared. I'm in the yellow zone, I'm frustrated, I'm silly, I'm excited, so we can definitely give you guys one too.
Okay.
So let me just jump in real quick. So the objective for today is we want to empower you as parents to not only identify what the zones are, but we already use that in the classroom at both sides, both the top of the world and at Elmore. So we want to create not something new that you're doing in your own silo at home. We're creating that universal language across sites. And really, it's just you're piggybacking off the skills that we've already taught our children. And so that's going to be something that you guys are going to put into your arsenal of parenting tools and strategies, so that it becomes like automatic, right? And what we want to try to do is empower you to say like, okay, you know, right, one of the quotes that I live by that I learned is that we want to invite our children into our calm and not subscribe to the chaos. Because as parents, you know, it's so easy, especially if you're running late and you have multiple things and you're like the homework, or there's a big project, there's lunch, there's maybe a field trip, you didn't get sun, and you're feeling, gosh, I'm mounting and I'm getting into the red zone. It's so easy for us to like flip our lid and just, wah, you know what I mean? So it's like taking that moment for us to remind ourselves, okay, I'm about to get into the red zone or angry. I need to utilize some strategies to get back into the green zone. That way I can present the best self, most calm self, right? And then when you have calm, it creates a calm environment, right? So for practice, since you guys are learning, we're still learning, right? So if a child, let's say, for example, I have 3 children at home. This is one of the scenarios. You tell me what zone it is. So sitting on a couch, they said, hey buddy, did you get your homework done? He's like, not yet. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give you 5 minutes and then change my clothes, I'm gonna come back. And then do my thing, come back. Hey buddy, we change your clothes? I mean, we're gonna do homework? Yeah. Like, hey, hey buddy, hey, we're gonna do some homework now. Okay. No. No, fine. What zone is? Whatever.
What zone is the kid in?
Denial.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Teachers. And you probably know my child, so.
I was gonna say, is it yellow?
So it's just like completely like ignoring and right, so yellow, even though it's not heightened emotion, it's one of those emotions that just kind of flat that again back into green and compliant and engaged, right?
You okay if I check the chat on here?
Oh, no, that'd be
Oh,
great.
you have someone on it? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you're right, there is a little.
Yeah. Let's try another one. So I have a daughter, she plays softball. She struck out and many people strike out. Like, hey, how'd you do? I'm fine.
Right.
You wanna talk about it? No, I'm fine. Look at me, I'm fine. What's on machine?
Right.
Absolutely. Okay. And so we wanna like, again, we're gonna go through some scenarios where you can identify that immediately, figure out what coping strategies your child would be best at to get them back down to neutral, back to green.
Do we have something in the chat? We're good? Okay. So Mary Ann kind of touched on this. This is our typical communication now, right? There's a request or demand, like she shared the example with her son. Let's start your homework, right? The trigger was he wasn't getting started after multiple redirections. So then we want to look at what is the parent emotional reaction? Because then that can explain why our kids have a certain reaction. So if your reaction starts to become a little bit more aggressive, not like aggressive, you know, but like
Yeah.
loud, and you're raising your voice, you're yelling, right? That can make your child respond in a certain way as well too. Maybe shut down, maybe start getting aggressive back, yelling, now they're arguing with you. right? So when we talk about communication styles today, we want to kind of remember this map and remember, okay, how is my communication style in this moment? And is it causing my child to move into a certain zone or use certain communication styles because I'm modeling that at home? Did you want to touch on anything else, Megan?
No, actually, in a moment, we're gonna go over your own commitment. Yeah, so we can go.
And that's where we're at.
Okay, so if you don't already have a pen, get one out. You have the time for a couple pages, we're really trying to take some attention to read through all the scenarios and then circle. And then calculate your score, so those of you that are online, we will put the link to the communication style quiz. And then once you're done, if you haven't already, please feel free, get up, get a drink of water, coffee, snack, hydrate yourself, and then we will go over your communication style. And that's.
I'm gonna give it to my mom.
The guy was, he had, there was, you know what, I want another coffee so I can give it to my spouse. Because as you're going through this, you know, with some of the things that we're saying, you're like, okay, so it is clearly evident that I am styling one. Or you could be a multiple style. So here's what we're gonna do. One, we are going to kind of have you take a look at your score. I'm gonna go over what each of the styles are. And then I'm gonna have you all get into groups to process your style. Because I want you to take a moment to step back. And now that you know what your style would be, how are you showing up as a parent and as a caregiver in your communication style with kiddos, okay? So, go ahead, flip to the back. Take a look at those scores, okay? If you scored really heavily in style one, you are action oriented, okay? Put action there. I'm gonna read some of these words. So you like results, you like people that are responsible, you have objectives that are clear, you appreciate people giving and receiving feedback. You appreciate the performance of something. You appreciate an experience, productivity, being efficient. You don't mind challenge. You like efficiency. You like achievements. You like forward movement ahead. You don't mind change. And you like decision making. And I see some of you like, yep, that is me. That is me. Now, when we talk about the way you process your communication, it might be you're down to earth, right? You're pragmatic about things. You're direct and to the point. Some people might think that you are rude, but you are just like, you know what, let's get through the block. Just tell me how it is. You might be impatient. I see head nodding, and we're not judging, it's a safe space. You might be very decisive, which may or may not be a plus, right? It might be a plus because you're like, listen, we need action, we need results, but I think like, people are looking and we need a moment to like really like process this information, and you need to like be mindful of that when you're working in a group, right? You might be quick. You're adjusting idea. You processed it, you've got the idea, you're jumping ahead of the next. On to the next, on to the next. But it might take a while for your children as a caregiver, as a teacher, maybe even as a spouse, to kind of soak in that information. And then you might be energetic. Okay, so that's style one. Okay, moving on to style two. If you are style two, you like to process things. So you like to try things out, figure it out. You might want to analyze all your options before jumping into something. You might prefer procedures, steps. You might want to plan out first and next. You might observe people before you take your next step. You might be considered controlling, but you're really cerebrally planning out the steps in your head before you make action steps. You like to test things, you like proof, you want evidence, you want some details, and you might be a little cautious. The style two might be you. So as style two, the process in which you like to communicate is you might be systematic, you want step-by-step directions. You might be logical. You want to say, if I do this, then I'll get this. If I choose this step, I might get these results. So I need to be cautious. You might be factual. You might be very verbose. And in fact, you might even be perceived as unemotional, no affect. Because really you're taking it in and processing it. But you also might be patient. Because you're thinking, okay. All right, so that's style 2. Style 3, that one is a people person. So you're all about making connections with people. You're very intentional about maybe self-development. Or you may be very critical about your own self-development. Oh my gosh, she's held her head nod, but yep. You have lots of needs that may be in abundance, and so you want to like try to process which needs are the priority. You might be considered sensitive. You are a team player. You like cooperation. You have lots of feelings. You feel all the feelings, is what we talked about, right? Have lots of beliefs and values. You have certain expectations, not only for yourself, but your family members, the people around you, the people you associate with. You do appreciate team spirit. You like relationships with others, and you have a lot of grace and understanding. So the way you process, the way you're communicating with others as well as yourself is you might be spontaneous. You might be one of those, woo, let's do it. You know, what's the cool stuff? I do. Who wants this skydive? I'm in, you know? You might be very empathetic. You have a really well-developed, but maybe you don't even know you have a well-developed EQ or emotional intelligence. You could read other people's body language and nonverbal cues. You're considered to be very warm and inviting. You're emotional and you're perceptive. So we're talking about EQ. So if that's you, that's style number 3. Style number 4. This one's called idea. You have lots of concepts developed in your head. You're looking at what's new and innovative in the field. You appreciate creativity. You're looking for new and exciting opportunities, untapped. You appreciate interdependence. You're going to do your thing, and I'm going to do my thing. We're going to come back together as we put our ideas and concepts together. You're looking for new ways, new methods, maybe for efficiency, maybe even rethinking some of your own systems. You're looking to improve not only yourself, but the systems that you have. You might look at problems in a different way. You have grand design. You look at issues in a way that are not obstacles, but ways to look at how to bend and flow and maneuver. You see potential in new opportunities, and you also look at alternatives. The way you process your communication style is you're very imaginative, you're very charismatic, or maybe some people may perceive you as very charismatic. Maybe you're taking it to make it.
Still.
Sometimes because you're innovative, you might be perceived as difficult to understand because not everybody sees your vision, right? Some people might consider you egocentric only because you're seeing that inefficiencies in certain systems and you see what needs to be done. And so what people might perceive you as egocentric, but it's almost like you have to be articulate enough to talk about the process to get everybody there. Next, you're full of ideas and very provocative. So tap into that communication style to be able to get your team or your people. And so the reason why we have this is because I want you to reflect on your own communication style. Because obviously you're not going to give this to your child, not to your 4-year-old, right? certainly not to your fifth graders, and have them to really be introspective, how they communicate. So this is for you. And I will give you another copy, for you to give to your spouse, because there's other caregivers in your, home. It might be a dad, it might be, grandparent. And like, that could help you communicate with the surrounding community, right? Of who's taking care of your child. Now, what I'd like you to do is, I want you to think of some scenarios in which your communication and personality style might be clashing with your child. I want you to talk about maybe some of the hiccups that you've had already, or maybe something that teachers have said, hey, you know what, your kiddo is, fantastic. There's some areas of strength, here's some areas of growth. Now I want you to reflect as the caregiver, parent. What am I doing that I'm struggling with my communication style with my kiddo? How can I make this better? And he might not know the answer. So if we're okay with this, in this shared safe space, we'd love for you to just feel comfortable enough to unzip your heart, share it. We're all parents, we all care for kids here, and we don't have the answers, but we're also human, and we do make mistakes. So sometimes other parents and other people might be able to have another perspective. So if you could do me a favor, pair up, small groups, feel comfortable, introduce yourself.
Finish up those thoughts.
Too similar.
We're gonna come together
We're like,
in our group here.
I'm hearing such amazing dialogue. I think it's so very difficult where you feel stressed and authenticity in this group. But does anybody feel like you're comfortable enough to share some interaction that they have with their own child in reflection of their own communication with that?
say that question, I'm sorry, we were.
So, no, it's okay. Feels comfortable enough kind of sharing out one of a difficult situation with your child, but now that you're understanding your communication style and how you're showing up for your children, what are some aha moments that you're having as we're exploring our own communication styles as caregivers, and then seeing how we are maybe having that difficulty with our children?
What she just said was like exactly the answer to your question. Fantastic.
Yes.
I
don't want to.
Oh, no, you're good, and let me know if I miss anything, but I would see. My son and I are very, very similar, where he knows how to push my buttons and I know how to push his buttons, and our fuses are very, very short. And I would say, like, there's an example in the morning where it's like, he wants to go to the bathroom with me. But I'm like, you never told me that up front, and he will have the most massive meltdown. Where it's like, okay, can we just reflect, maybe tomorrow morning? We can try it again, where it's like, but you need to tell me proactively, I cannot read your mind. You need to say, hey, and mommy will do a better job. Hey, mommy's gonna go to the bathroom. Would you like to go with me? And now it's like, we almost got to that point where the next morning, I said something and then he said something, and we were able to go accomplish that together. But but in the same time, it does take a little bit more effort on my part to realize I also need to understand that I can't do everything by myself anymore. I can't go do a 5-second task. It's like he immediately has to go down, or like, this is the other scenario where it's like, I wanted to go downstairs real quick and go put something away. I come back up. Mom, you didn't bring me with you. Now I need you to go bring that object back upstairs, and then I need you to come and get me, pick me up, and then we have to go back down and get it. And I'm like, no, and I'm trying to like find out a fine line boundary of like, no, this is done, we need to now move forward.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be 2 minutes, this is now turned into a 15-minute scenario. So it's,
Yeah.
but again, it's now me trying to be more forward thinking of, okay, I better ask him, because I obviously don't want him to go down this more.
Yes. And if you're giving for your child.
I get frustrated, and then he's crying, and then he's frustrated with me, and it's like, okay, how can we figure this out together to find this balance? So that has been my like biggest hurdle at this age right now.
Right, developmentally.
He's not there, and then I need to be patient about that, and I was like, but you think you're a big boy, let's go, like,
Yeah.
let's move on to the next task, we gotta go accomplish something else.
Yeah,
But no, he's still very stuck in this moment.
but you're action oriented.
Yes.
Yeah. So you see the dichotomy between the two, right? And then again, you know, your spouse is giggling over here, like, yeah, I see that.
I mean, he goes there too.
Like that, right? And so I want you, and I'm gonna invite you all to, throughout the course of this time, after we finish this, take a moment, pause, as you're still like, okay, there's some friction at home. Let me take a moment. How am I showing up as my communication style? What kind of style do they need? And developmentally, where are they at? Are they in middle school? Are they in fifth grade? You know? Are they girls? Are they showing up with all dressed? That's even power uniting. You know what I mean? So, and then let's take a moment to really proactively teach our kiddos. Because again, one of the things that we say as we walk into classroom is, especially with the littles, if they're not already those people, communication people, you know, that really just understand nonverbal communication, read people, they know it. I'm sure some of you might have kids that just know when they do that. Right? And you're like, well, do you have, or mommy, you're so beautiful. It's like, oh my God, how did you know this is gonna make my day? You have some kiddos like that, and some kiddos are like, wait, mom said, what? You know, and they're just clueless. And that's okay, because that's not them. But what we're trying to do and empower you all is to give our kiddos at whatever level they are. It could be with it could be preschool, it could be elementary, even middle and high, right? I mean, even some of us adults, are like, okay, I haven't developed that in my toolbox of social emotional skills yet. And so what we're going to do is we're going to teach you some of the skills, some of the verbiage, and again, we're all human at the end of the day. And so even though we might have the skill set, we might not be able to be present in the moment, because when we talk about this, it's the part of your brain, that frontal lobe is the part that rationalizes and has thought. But when you flip your lid, this is the part of your brain that's the reptilian brain, that's the fight, flight, and the two others, freeze and fawn. So this is like the, you know, fisticuffs, like if you think you're in danger, something's happening, don't tell me to calm. I want to help you, you know, and you can't rationalize. So what we're gonna do is, we've taken a look at your particular communication style. Again, you're not gonna give this to your kiddos. But now what we're gonna do is some segue into teaching your kiddos some skills on how to communicate and how to develop that EQ when they're interacting on the playground, in small groups in the classroom, maybe you've got play dates, you know, if they're having like, someone's just the play on sport time. And you're like, okay, you know, hey, you want to say faith, you are not the parent, but how can you help them maneuver that with those skills? How can you teach them how to problem solve independent of what would be coaching? So.
Yes, so there are 3 different types of communication styles. And now after taking your test, you might kind of see where you fall under, right? But, and again, like Marianne said, let's try to now notice where your child, right? So the passive communication is like, they're kind of hiding their feelings, right? Or they just want to avoid conflict, right? So maybe they are very emotional, but they don't like that feeling of conflict. And so they're kind of like either really quiet and scared to speak up for themselves, or they're just gonna go with the flow of things because they don't wanna ruffle any feathers, right? Of like, I'm okay with whatever you wanna do. And then that aggressive is like they express their needs forcefully, they're loud. They might be like, you know, this is what I'm gonna do and we're doing it now, right? And then the assertive is they're clearly expressing what they need respectfully, right? And they're thinking of not just their thoughts, but other people's thoughts. And they're using like a team effort to talk things through. And they're gonna use what we're gonna introduce in a second. The assertive communication is using a lot of like I messaging or I statement, or for our littles, a bug and a wish, which we'll talk about. and that's how they're communicating their needs respectfully. So, like we said at the beginning, we want this session to not only help you understand your communication and stuff, but we want this to help empower you to teach your children how to communicate their needs, their feelings, and problem solve effectively. So the step one is to teach them those 3 different styles, right? So pointing out to them, oh, I can see that you want this, but you're communicating that very aggressively, and that's putting me into the yellow zone. I'm starting to feel very frustrated because you're raising your voice at me. How could you say that differently? I do that with my daughter. She's in preschool. She'll be like, I'm thinking of like an example, like, I want this, and I'm like, whoa, hold on. I understand you want that, but how can you say that in a different tone of voice, Blakey? And she'll be, can I have that, please? And I'm like, that's better. We're not gonna raise our voice to shout for what we want. You can change your tone of voice. So I'm already trying to kind of teach that to her, right? Or like if they're, hey, you're being a little too quiet. You need something, I want you to use your big boy or big girl voice and say what you need, right? So you can teach that in those moments there, right? And as you're teaching that, like raise your voice, lower your voice, right? Look me in the eye, wipe that look off your face. You're starting to teach them to go into that more assertive communication style, right? And shaping them to steer away from that more aggressive or passive type, right? And then step 2 is helping your child identify their need first. So what do I need right now, right? What do you feel like is unfair or uncomfortable? What would help you in this situation, right? So then that way you can help them use that I message to problem solve, right? I feel whatever emotion it is, and I need this, right? I feel this because of this, right? And so then as you're understanding what they need, then you can help them talk that out with those I statements. And an I statement is just simply like, I starts the beginning of the statement, right? I feel, I need, I want, right? And all while you're teaching that, you're teaching them to look at and notice, what does their tone of voice sound like? What does their body language look like? What does their volume of their voice sound like? Because again, that can, depending on what that is, that can either make a problem better or worse. And as we go through our slides, we're going to talk about that. Like, if your child is faced with a problem at home and they're not aware of their tone of voice, their body language, their volume, right? They may come home and say that they had a problem, and you find out the problem was escalated because their tone of voice was loud, their body language was aggressive, right? Their volume of their voice was high, right? Or they weren't speaking up for themselves loud enough. They were being very passive about it, right? They were putting their head down. They were like maybe giggling and laughing when somebody did something to them. All those things matter. So it's important to teach that while you're doing that. So as we go through those steps to problem solve, the first thing we want to do is teach them to stop and name their feeling. And that's what an I message is, right? I feel this. We're teaching them that in order to make progress in solving a problem, you have to express how that problem makes you feel. But not just that, you need to stop and also hear how you might have made the other person feel too. It's not just about your feelings, it's also understanding how you may have made another person feel too, right? So we use this in our in classrooms. Many of the teachers use this through our second step curriculum. It's called Stop, Name Your Feeling, Calm Down. And that helps students remember that in order to express what I need or solve this problem appropriately, the first thing I need to do is express how I feel and calm down. As we know, we've all been there. I've been there before. I was there on Friday after work with my daughter. If we don't calm down before talking things out, we're probably not going to communicate things effectively, right? And again, we've all been there. I was very aggressive communicator on Friday with my daughter. I was like, what is happening with you? And I did not stop and my phone calmed down. I just was yelling at her and my husband was like, whoa, are you okay? And I was like, no. But that's step one, right? We want to make sure we take a moment to even just say, I'm gonna step away right now, calm down. Because if I don't want to say or have my tone of voice or my volume get to a level that's gonna make the situation worse or make us feel uncomfortable, right? And again, you can use this with the zones. Stop, name your feeling with the zones and calm down. I feel in the red zone because I've asked you 3 times to start your homework and you haven't done it, right? I feel in the yellow zone because I've asked you to get moving this morning so we can get to school on time and you're dragging and you're whining and stuff like that, right? So stop, name your feeling. So everyone knows how you feel. And I think we've been there, like when you finally just say how you feel, it kind of helps start the calm down process in general, right? Rather than just like, or to like slam things and guess how I'm feeling, right? Or it kind of starts making you feel more regulated when you're able to say, you know what, I'm in the red zone right now, right? Because now you're like, okay, at least people know what I'm feeling, right? And then you can start regulating yourself. Is there anything I'm missing there that you wanted to add? Okay.
I love this.
Is this based off of like a local study or psychological?
Well, we use the second step curriculum, which is a curriculum that helps students understand that talking about your feelings can help, right? Problem solving in situations in a calm, respectful way, because I think just we've all seen, and many professionals have seen that when people, kids, adults are not taking a second to calm down, we see problems can escalate and get bigger, right?
And I just want to add that the zones are based off of research done by Dr. Winters. And so when we're talking about naming your feeling, you are already emotionally identifying where you're at. And then you're able to figure out, okay, now I'm dysregulated or I'm escalated in this emotion. How can I get back to baseline? And so we talk about one, being dysregulated by naming the feeling. Then we talk about, okay, what coping strategies do I need to employ to get back down to baseline? And we could use as adults, right? Especially if somebody drops you off, takes your parking spot, you're like, whoa, I didn't regret that, right? And so you have to determine, is it worth it to confront this person, right? And so like, you have to, in the moment, figure out how to de-escalate yourself with appropriate conduct strategies. And then from that point on, sometimes it's still stuck. The emotion's still stuck in your body, that residual like, hey, yay, I didn't punch them in the face, right? But how do I literally let it go? And so in the classroom, we talk about, is this like a big deal or a little bit? Again, putting those like skills and strategies in little arsenal so that they go, oh, okay, yeah, oh, no, it's not a big deal, right? But if it is a big deal, right? What do we need to do to help protect you, provide you with advocacy and agency so that they're not like, Mommy, I need you to do this for me, right? We want to create those neural pathways and give them that self-advocacy skills that you've modeled by doing all of these strategies. And that way, when you're out on plating, or you have another sibling, or you have cousins over for Christmas, and they're spending a whole weekend, you're not the one policing all of these conflicts that you're like listening to see. And then if you do need to step in and help shape and guide, you have given them the skill set for that. So this is all research based in the second step, which is like lots of research based off of all of this. And then with all of the different social emotional research they put together, develop into the appropriate curriculum. So it's.
And I want to touch on the zones too, that when she talks about size of the problem, that is a part of the curriculum. And I think that's something to remember is pointing that out to your child is like your reaction needs to match the size of the problem. Okay, you just told me now that you've calmed down, you realize this was a small problem. but what was your reaction to that? It was big, right? So it didn't match. When we have small problems, we're allowed to feel frustrated, but we need to keep our reaction small, right? And you're allowed to say, this situation is making me feel frustrated, but you still need to stay in control and not have a big giant meltdown, because that doesn't match the size of the problem. So that's another good thing to.
Would you recommend maybe including that either in like step 2 or step 3, if I'm like trying to at least identify where the problem is?
Absolutely. I love that. It's like when you're starting to talk to your child, right, to figure out what they need.
Right.
I love adding that in. Okay. And as we know, to have them name how they feel and say what they need, we want them to calm down first. And so that's why when we started this session, I said it was super great that we did the zones first to build those foundational skills, because then you can go back to the zones. Okay, before we talk about how you feel and what you need, let's calm down together, right? And that's what we talked about in session 1 is depending on your child's age is gonna be dependent on what strategies you use or help them use to calm down, right? Your 4.5-year-old is still needing some help co-regulation, right? Hey, come stand with mommy or sit with mommy and let's
He doesn't
take
want
some
to do it.
deep breaths together, right? Or let's go, you know
Yeah.
what, let's go punch a pillow or something like that. You gotta find
Do it
what works
together.
for him,
Do it together.
Yeah,
That's
let's
I just
do
wrote
it
down that
together.
I'm not.
okay?
And I've been trying to like either count to 10 myself, just
Yeah.
or doing the deep breaths, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what, mommy's gonna calm down, because that's
Yes.
gonna help me.
And that's
with
good,
you.
because now you're modeling it, and he might not be doing it, but he's seeing you do it, right? Whereas like, if you're escalated and you start like slamming a door, and you're like, and my daughter's starting to call that, just calm down, I'm like, oh, okay, sassy girl. But no, but they are watching everything that we do, because I've been there, like, I'm frustrated with the dog barking, so I like, kick him over to the side, and so she'll hear him barking now, and she'll like, and I'm like, they're watching everything that we do. So even if he doesn't do it, just do it and model it for him, right? But I love that, add it in, okay, we're gonna calm down. Now let's talk about this. With what just happened, was this a small problem or was this a big problem, right? Okay, we calmed down together. Now let's talk about how that problem made you feel. Because now that they're more calm, they can say how it makes them feel. When they're not calm, they're like, this is a big problem. I'm so angry. I want to throw this or whatever it is, right? But once they're calm, now they're able to think more clearly, right? Because their lid is now closed, and that's your thinking part of your brain that's now in control to say, I know how to solve this problem. But when it's like this, it's like, I don't know what to do. I just am reacting because my reacting brain is in control. Okay, so let's go to empowering your child using these skills. Okay, because as we know at school, and we have teachers here who can speak to this, problems happen, right? And then our kids come home and they tell us about those problems, and we go into mom or mama bear mode, daddy bear mode, and we want to protect and we want to advocate, we want to stand up for our kid, right? But this is where we want to help our child gain those advocacy skills and handle these problems independently. Because these problems are going to continue, not just in elementary school, not just in middle school, not just in high school. When they become an adult, they're going to come across an adult who has a rude moment, or who's rude in general. So you're gonna come across, situations where somebody has a mean moment, they're having a bad day and they react in a mean way. They don't do that all the time, but it was a one-time thing. You're gonna come across conflicts. They happen, right? So we want to empower our child in those moments to use their, appropriate communication style to talk things out and problem solve effectively, right? So we put this in here to remind parents that when your child comes home, there are going to be situations that happen, but there's questions that you can ask before like jumping right away and calling the school and saying, so-and-so is being bullied. We're getting that, a lot of where parents are just right away hear that a problem happens and they're calling it bullying, but they're not getting more information. And this is a great way. This is what we do as teachers, staff, counselors, when we bring kids into, do peer mediation, we ask certain questions, right? Hey, well, did they do it to hurt you? Yeah, they did it on purpose, right? Okay, they did do it on purpose, and if you guys look, these are color coded to let you know if, based on their answer, if it's a rude moment, or it might be leading to a bullying situation, okay? But let me just cover this. A rude moment is like to remind your child, people have rude moments. It's spontaneous, it's not planned, they just like weren't thinking, like if so-and-so's at the lunch table and he's in the yellow sun and he burps in your face, gross, ew, rude, but he wasn't doing that, right? Mean moment is also spontaneous and unplanned, and is usually can happen 1 to 2 times, and that's something we talk to kids a lot about, is like, hey, you're saying that so-and-so bullied you, but this only happened 1 time, right? They lost in soccer at recess and, they threw the ball at you and called you a cheater, right? Didn't feel good, right? That person didn't handle their emotions the right way, but it's not bullying, right? It's a mean moment. And then bullying is where it's that repeated. They're doing it over and over every day. They're targeting that person or that group of people, right? And they're trying to hurt that person, whether that's physically, emotionally, socially, socially meaning like excluding them on purpose over and over and over again. And if that's the case, then of course you want to step in and help your child and advocate for your child in that situation. And then conflicts, meaning both people have caused harm. So that's where these questions can be helpful. Okay, did they do it to hurt you? No, they just weren't really thinking about what they were doing. And, they didn't do it to hurt me on purpose. Yeah, they did it to hurt me intentionally. Now we want to ask this. Well, how many times have they done it? Oh, it was just 1 time. Okay, so they did do it on purpose to hurt you, but it was just a 1-time thing. That was a rude or mean moment. Let's talk about how we can handle that together, right? And then that's where you can go through those steps to help them talk things through. So then the next day they can go to school and use that iMessage. Hey, I felt really frustrated when you left me out yesterday, and I wish that you would include me, right? And you're helping them go do that all on their own, right? Because truthfully, in all these situations, they can't handle it all. And then how many times have they done this? Multiple times over and over. Okay, it's starting to look like, but now, okay, are they specifically targeting you? No, they do it to a bunch of different people, right? Or yeah, it's just me. Do they know that it hurts you? Well, and this is where we want to point out the communication style. Well, I kind of laugh when they do it to me. I'm like, stop, don't do that, right? Now these questions are helping you understand, oh, well, no wonder my child's dealing with this situation. They're laughing when so-and-so's calling them names. Of course, that person's gonna still call them names. I need to teach my child, like, if you don't like it, you can't sit there and laugh, or they're gonna think it's a joke too. You need to say, hey, in a serious tone of voice, I don't like that, right? So, well, yeah, I've told them that it hurts me. I've told them to stop and they don't listen to me, right? So then that's again looking more like a bullying thing. And this is the biggest question that we want parents to make sure they're asking their children. Well, have you done anything back? Have you done anything to start the problem? And I know it's awkward and our kids are like, no, right? Because they know they could potentially get in trouble, but it's super important. We do this in our peer mediations. We want you to be honest. You're not gonna be in trouble. We'd rather know both sides of the story so we can make progress in solving this problem. But if you deny that you're not doing anything, then we're not gonna get in, right? So have you done anything back to them? And if the answer is yes, it's not bullying, it's a conflict. And that's where we want to point out, okay, so they called you a cheater and threw the ball at you. What did you do? Well, I picked up the ball and threw it back at them, right? Then you're like, oh, well, no wonder they're having a conflict. I'm not going to call the school and say that my child's being bullied because I see my child added to the problem. So let me help empower my child on how they could have solved that differently, right? But if they're like, no, I haven't done anything back, then of course, then you're starting to see the signs that it's a bullying incident. But most situations, and we found through peer mediation, are conflicts. And it's conflicts because of the lack of students or children having the skills to advocate for themselves appropriately and express their feelings and express their needs appropriately. Because they're either being too passive about it or they're being too aggressive about it and they're making the conflict or the problem worse. So, again, these are just some other questions to ask to figure out if that's why the problem's getting bigger, right? Well, honey, are you laughing when you're telling that person to stop, right? Are you yelling? Are you getting in their face? Well, of course, they're probably gonna keep arguing with you, right? Or are you showing them a serious face? Are you standing up tall? And then you can even say, let's practice. Okay? You could say, because I'm not gonna go to school and do this for you tomorrow. I want you to go to school and do it. So let's practice. What can you say if this happens again? Right? And let's practice standing up straight and tall, looking in the eye. You want a serious voice. We're not gonna put our eyes down and be smiling and saying, right? You're gonna coach them through every aspect of that. What their tone of voice sounds like, what their body language looks like, what their volume of their voice is like, right? To help them get into that assertive communication style to solve the problem. Is this you?
Oh. And so, you know what, these are all fantastic strategies for when you have those car rides home. I was school today, you know, and you're pointing out what happened on the playground. And again, this could be used with siblings. This is definitely something that we use in our second step curriculum, which is conflict in problem solving. So kind of going over this pretty quickly, it's the acronym is STEP, and it's basically saying the problem without blame. Because you know, like when you say, you did this and you did this, this tends to escalate, right? So saying the problem just without blaming. Next is like thinking of solutions. We could do this or we could do this. What do you think would solve the problem? Next is exploring different solutions. We do this, what do you think will happen? You do this, what do you think will happen? And then last, let's go on here with that, right? And I'll go into this a little bit later when we go to the virtual session, but really I want to get to the meat potatoes of the I statement reframing. We have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to pass it back to you to talk about the I statement quickly, because I have a couple new skills that I want to leave you with so you can practice for our next virtual session.
Yeah, so again, as we're figuring out what type of problem our child's dealing with, right? We want to empower them to express what they feel and what they need in those situations. And the best way to do that is with those I statements, right? And again, this all goes back to your communication style. Practice this. You have a problem with your child at home, right? I feel this because, and I know in the step it says without blaming, and sometimes it's hard, I'll do, I feel this because you called me a name. So instead, I feel hurt when I'm called names. I didn't even say who, when I'm called names. And I would like to be spoken to respectfully. And I didn't blame them, right? So you can practice this and model this when you're talking out your feelings with your child, but when your child comes home and states there's a problem, you can also help empower them to use these as well. And with our littles, I love a bug and a wish. They even have a book about it, a bug and a wish. And it helps them because they're still in that young age of trying to learn how to communicate their feelings. So a bug and a wish is great. You just say, it bugs me when I'm called names. I wish I would be spoken to respectfully. It bugs me when the ball's taken out of my hands. I wish you would have it first. Right? I kind of blamed that. That's fine. Okay, but with practice, but that's why I love a bug and a wish for like, you know, preschool, TK, kinder, first, even second, sometimes because it's just an easier way for them to express how they feel. Where the I statement, you're probably getting into like the upper grades. Okay. Did I miss anything there?
No, I love that.
Okay.
All right. You know what's so great is Bree is a mother to a preschooler. She's turning 3.
Yeah,
That's right.
sweet.
And I have the entire different like age bracket. So I have 17, 16, and 11. And at some point I had, if you heard those ages, I had Irish twins. Totally by design. And I thought, oh my gosh, Without wondering what they're underwriting the health rating at home, it's a lot, right? But I want to kind of segue a little bit, change gears, we're gonna talk about limit setting and firm. Now, I'm sure some of you have gone into the classroom setting where you're like, I have one kid, how do teachers do this with 30? Bless your hearts, right? And so what I love for like either one of you, we have Nicole Stewart, she's a first grade teacher at Elmore. We also have Miss Mario, she's also a first grade teacher at Elmore. If I could have either one of you be brave enough to kind of share one strategy used for like an if then, or how does limit setting look like in your classroom? What do you share with your children? Because you might be saying, you know, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that, right? Or stop it. And then it just seems to escalate. You know, I will not do that. Let's do that. So instead of stop it. Margaret, let's do it.
Yeah, I always think about like clear is kind. Like clear is the kindest thing you can be, so like, and being proactive rather than reactive. So setting the kids up for success, like in first grade especially, and Mrs. Marchbanks and I have taught first grade for most of our careers. So we are very familiar with the little. It's a lot of, we are going to front load them. So we're gonna tell them exactly what we expect. And we're gonna be very clear with like, okay, so when you go to your seat, you're going to get out this book and we're going to do this activity. And I'm gonna break it down into those very specific steps. And I'm gonna model for them like, and you're gonna walk when I say you go to your seat. We're not running, we're not doing this. If this happens, like if you run to your seat, then you're gonna have to come back to the carpet. You're gonna have to try it again. And if you walk to your seat nicely, then you just get to go to your seat and get started. And then we hold that boundary. So like the minute they run, we're like, oh, no, thanks. Let's come back and try it again. And it's not punitive. It's just that was my expectation and you didn't meet it. So let's try it again. But I do that with my own kids at home too, which with a 2-year-old is always interesting. But it's the same kind of principle where like right now we have lots of teeth brushing battles because he's 2 and he's in the I do it myself phase. And so I'm like, okay, you get to brush for 10 seconds. And after 10 seconds, and I will count to 10, then it's my turn to brush your teeth because you're 2 and you can't do it by yourself yet. And so after that 10 seconds, even if he's like, no, I do, I'm like, nope, it's my turn. I'm gonna do it. And if he still, doesn't want to do it, it's very much that boundary is there and he knows, well, either mom can do it and I can be upset about it, or we can have a game and it'll be fun. And I'm like, oh, it's a monster, like, whatever. Let's get all the cavities out, like, let's keep them away. But it's gonna happen no matter what. And so that boundary is always there, but it's also very consistent for time to time to time, so he knows exactly what to expect. And it's the same thing in the classroom.
Thank you, Stuart. So what you've heard right now is just alternatives to no, right? So no is going to actually escalate the problem. I'd love to hear, what does it look like here?
I was just gonna piggyback off Mrs. Stewart there. We talk a lot about consequences and how there are positive consequences for positive actions and negative consequences for negative actions. And so with that follow through, it's, here are the expectations. And if we have positive actions, we will experience those positive consequences and it's gonna be great. We're gonna get the monsters out. But if we have negative actions, what will that look like? And again, keeping that boundary there and following through with those consequences, and they have to match the action. But talking them through the process, kind of as you're setting those expectations of, what do they look like? And, why would we want to have the positive actions? And let's go down that road.
Thank you. So you're hearing it from 2 educators that have been at it for a while, right? So, and I don't want you to close off your idea, well, yeah, that's great for you because you're in the classroom, you're, trained. And as parents, right, we want to make sure that we have the same language, but just in our one-on-one situations with our kiddos. Or maybe if you have like cousins over or at a play date, right? We want to empower you to be proficient at limit setting and firm boundaries. So here's the next thing I want to set the stage, okay? So I want you to think about it at home, and I want to invite you into sitting on that really happened to me. So, I have 3 children, as I told you. I have 17, 16, 11. At the time of this particular story, I had 9, 8. I had a 4-year-old. And then, so those are my children. And then I had cousins over. I thought, such a good, look at me. So we had not only the best little slumber party, but then in the morning time, I thought, okay, everybody come in. And so just picture this, right? So I had 9, 8, 4. The cousins were 6, 5, and 4. And so I set the table, everybody's still waking up. And I gently start by turning on it up, right? I got bacon sizzling in the oven. I got cinnamon rolls, cinnamon. And I like start to set the table and then I'm whisking eggs. And as the kids like, wake up and like, oh my God, it's the best day ever. And it was the best day ever, right? I want you to step into my shoes for just a moment, right? 6 children, under 9 years old. I'm the only person on the older. And as I'm like making sure nothing is burning, I also have kids that are like, hey, mommy, I want milk. Hey, mommy, I want chocolate milk. Mommy, I want orange juice. Auntie, can I have this? And, okay, all right, timer, done. Okay, okay. And then I get 2 children. We want food. We want food. And I was like, one adult. And I'm starting to that. And I think to myself, oh, no, we don't. No, I am not short for it, and all these thoughts are circling and happening to myself. So this is what I want you to think about. I want you to figure out, because we talked about communication style, how to act appropriately. So write this down. This is an acronym for limit setting and boundaries. The first one is A, to acknowledge their function. So obviously, as they're pounding the table, we're acknowledging. I can tell you guys are really hungry, you're probably famished, right? Okay, but there's one of me, 6 of you, right? Putting empathy back, right? And understanding a little bit of EQ. So A, acknowledge the emotion. B is to communicate a boundary. So think about this. Remember, alternatives to no. Communicating would be in Auntie's house. Or words. Or we're not doing, no thank you, right? So that's C. Next T is to tell them what the alternatives are. Okay, so the alternative might not, we're not pounding. You might ask me, Mommy, what time's breakfast ready? Right? Gives them a little understanding. Or the another alternative might be, because there's only one of them, 6 of you. And how can we help you? You're giving them agency to develop EQ, looking at your situational surrounding. How can we be of service? Especially as we talk about our own communication style. Are they people? Are they action oriented? Right? And so, and then that right there, this acronym is for you caregivers to learn how to act appropriately in those moments. Because the alternatives to no, don't do this, stop. It escalates the situation. It also even might even sever that relationship in the moment, because I want you to think of a time and situation where you're like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And it just closes off your heart. And you think, you know what? I'm not going to actively engage. I'm just going to sit here as a passive observer. And when this is over, I'm going to wait, and I'll be done. Yeah.
And I want to add that it's so important to explain what they could do instead, because especially the youngers, they're still learning that. Like, oh, I didn't know I could ask that question, right? I do that with my daughter. I'm doing her hair and she's like, oh my, Blakey, we are not screaming.
Mhm.
You could ask me, hey, mommy, are you almost done with my hair? How much longer, mommy? We're not gonna scream, because that makes no sense to me, and we're being a little dramatic right now, but, they still need those, that language, right?
So the- so
What
the
what
old-
is saying, what's
my
asked
ass is not best. The old kids need it too.
Yes, oh,
I
yeah.
would see the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a question too on the, where it gets to the point where we feel like we've literally just said no, like, to several different actions in a row. And it's like, where I'm like, Rylan, we've literally said no to everything that you've done in the last like 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I feel horrible, but like, what else can we be doing? So
Like,
like, maybe
everything-
so how does that, or like, do we just take a pause and we sit down and reflect like, and then maybe review everything that we've done and we could do an alternative to all of those?
Because your
Okay.
little is little.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
that's what I heard.
yeah.
I want to invite you into what we do. You said no, you heard the boundary, but you said, oh, no, what, how about we do this? We're gonna do this for 2 minutes instead of time.
Yeah,
And then if we can make it higher,
yeah.
do it in a way that's like right there at their level. Then after 2 minutes, we could do this. But if you still want to continue, we could do that. So you're building stamina of compliance. So much. So
1 minute.
here's what I would like all of you guys to do. This is gonna be part of your time. And in this regard, you're going to get your name. We're gonna pass that out. We are going to give you all a book called How to Talk So Children Will Listen, How to Listen So Children Will Talk. I want to open up that dialogue. We are going to be meeting, have fun. I'm gonna show you the whole and move it.
We'll share out the scenarios,
So
via email. Yeah, so you could practice through those at home.
Are we gonna get the, I liked some of the
Slides.
slideshows, some of them I was like, I
Yeah.
need.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the book, it's called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, How to Listen So Kids Will Talk by Bill Finger. It's great, it is great, and we're gonna break it up into weekly reading and some homework. Then, to advance to the next phase, we will be meeting virtually Wednesday, March 4th. We're gonna talk about, I would love to invite you to try the ACT method and even be intentional about how you're showing up for your kids. And then, we will be delivering books or have books for pickup, so if you don't mind.
So the FRC will reach out, and communicate when the books arrive. And we'll share that with the homework attached. And then just to, we have our final session 3 in April. We might switch out the time just to date and time, just to make it a little bit flexible because Mondays can be a little tough.
Yeah.
So we'll communicate that well in advance so you guys can continue to participate.
What was the, working period?
Yes,
I don't know where they were yet.
yes. And then the communication will come out with like the link, and how to log on and whatnot, and then when to pick up the books at the FRC.
We'll send it out.
We'll send out a list.
Usually it's.
Oh, it's just communications. Yeah. Would anybody like another copy of the communication?
Oh, yeah.
It's good to do with your team.
Yes.
Awesome.
She'll love it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.